The next video in chapter 1 is going to be over the service products and what makes service products different than your regular physical products or things that you buy at a store like a book. So the first thing to look at is what makes service products so different is the tangibility versus the intangibility. And what makes service products really unique is that they're actually a mix of those two things. You're technically getting both a physical product as well as a non-physical product or a service-based product. So this makes it really interesting because you're managing so many different elements or so many different layers of the actual product that you're getting, which is really cool, can be really challenging, but also makes it a lot more fun. And so when you're looking at this, I'm going to use the example of Chipotle. Hopefully I have some Chipotle fans out there. I personally love Chipotle. I know my sister-in-law only eats Freebird. She hates Chipotle and I feel the other way. So for my Freebird fans out there, just pretend this is Freebird's. Works the same way. The physical product is the food itself. That's the number one part of a physical product, is that someone's actually consuming something tangible, your food. But it's also the table and chairs and how comfortable they are. It's the fact that they have multiple different hot sauces and how consistent things are between locations for that physical product. So there are a number of different intricacies even in the physical product part of the service product itself. But then we add this additional layer, and the next layer is the intangible element or the service and how this can be your interactions with other people. It can be even something like watching an employee make your food for you. That's part of that service environment, even though you're not technically interacting in a traditional manner such as, what can I get for you? It's still someone doing something for you in a physical space. It's something that you are creating in the moment. It's a co-creation of a product, this service product, this intangible element of what you're consuming. It's part of what Chipotle has been so successful with over other quick service restaurants, is that you actually get to watch what's being made and you get to dictate that, kind of that Subway model. I think Subway was probably the first one that really did that. It's also how friendly the employees are, how competent they are, do they pay attention to detail. It's that people element, just kind of that environment of service or the intangible. But then there's an even third layer, and even more intricacy, and that's the environment itself. If you go to Walmart and you go to buy soap, yes, there are service elements involved in any kind of retail. There's a lot of products that have a service element to it, but really you're not there for service. You're there for a physical, tangible product, that's soap. And really the rest of it doesn't matter. You don't really care about what the environment's like. You really obviously don't care about the service. Walmart tends to not have great service, and you're just focused on that physical product. Whereas when you go to Chipotle, you're actually focused on many different things, not just the food you get, but the experience you have while you're there and the service-scape or the environment around you. We'll have an entire chapter on environment and service-scape, so I'm not going to get too much into that now, and you can see some writings down here about what falls into that. So now it's time to stop the video very quickly and do your own exercise of picking your own service product and dissecting that service product into tangible elements, intangible elements, and your environment or service-scape. And little bonus for yourself, maybe think about what the key drivers would be for that if you watched the previous video. Now, time to stop it. Okay, so hopefully now you've joined me back and you've done the little personal exercise. Of course, it's not graded, it's not for any points, but something that you should practice on your own to really get to know the material. We are now going to look at some other components that make a service product really different than a physical product. So the first was intangibility of what we sell. The second is heterogeneity. And what this means is that no two experiences can ever be the same. Even if those two experiences occur between the same two people with the same product. And the reason for that is that we're human, we're people, we're constantly changing. Your emotions change, your mood, maybe the weather outside changes. All these things are constantly in flux. So there's nothing that's ever permanent. And the interactions between two people, no matter how consistent you try to make them, they're never exactly consistent. They're never exactly the same. Now you add in multiple employees and multiple guests or multiple customers, now you're really seeing there are going to be discrepancies in any experience. So we call this heterogeneity, that things are not the same. And for an analogy, let's look at music and sports. So why bother going to a concert? Why bother going to a sports event? You might look at a sporting event and say, oh yes, definitely Portugal's going to to beat Ghana in the World Cup. That's just, I mean, there's no question there that's going to happen. Well, if those are the odds and there's no chance of there being any different, why even have the game in the first place? The reason for that is no two games can ever be the same, even if you have a predicted outcome. And the reason is that each person's different and each experience will happen differently, even though it's the same players and the same people and the same game, the same rules. Everything should be the same, and yet it's different each time. So that's why we have 7 games in the World Series, because each time it can be different. Same thing with a music concert. Why not just listen to it on the CD? Consistency, same thing every time. It's probably best that way. We go to a musical concert because those slight small differences are really impactful in our experience of the product itself. But at the same time, even though we know they're not different, we do want to minimize the impacts of heterogeneity, because in general, heterogeneity is a negative thing because we're not getting consistency between experiences. And we want to make sure someone has the same or similar experiences as other guests for a number of different reasons. And so what we want to do is we want to create things like SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. We want to make sure our employees treat all the guests the same, or at least interact with them in a similar manner so that they can get the best experience possible. We do that through hiring the right people, training them, picking specific target markets that are going to react similarly to the same things. And the last part of this is inseparability. And what that means is that we produce service at the same time that the customer consumes that service. So there's inseparability of production and consumption. And even though that physical product might be made ahead of time, such as the mattress for a hotel room, the guest is still experiencing that service as we're giving them service. And so what's bad about that is they can't return it if it's bad. If they don't like it, if it's not very well done, if they had a bad encounter with an employee, they can't undo that experience. They can't say, oh, well, let's try that again because I want to feel better about that check-in process. And I have an example of that, Jimmy Buffett concert. My dad is a huge fan of Jimmy Buffett. If you don't know who he is, I'm sure you know some of his songs, Margaritaville, Parrot Heads, all that kind of stuff. And Cheeseburger in Paradise, that one's fun. And this is especially topical considering his concert is on Saturday, June 4th, so right before this class starts. And a couple of years ago, we went to one of his concerts, and it was at Cynthia Wood's Mitchell Pavilion. And the pavilion has very stringent methods of allowing guests into the pavilion itself, and that's based on a number of different factors. And most likely because they have so many different musical acts come in that have so many different kinds of customers, they treat everyone the same. So they were expecting every single Jimmy Buffett fan to come in and be patted down, and it was extremely rigorous, and they were very abrupt and rude and harsh. Well, the problem with that is Jimmy Buffett fans tend to be middle-aged, middle-income, white folks, just generics, and they're not accustomed to being treated in such a manner. I'm not making a political statement, they're just not. And what they found was that they really didn't like the experience, and they complained a lot to the tour company for Jimmy Buffett, and it was so bad for all the complaints about how they were treated that the Jimmy Buffett concert didn't come back the following year. And that was a huge deal. So we can't return, even though the concert itself was great, even though everyone had a great time, even that one little moment in the beginning where they felt they had bad service, they can't return that one moment no matter how much they want to. So that's what makes a service product different than the rest of them. It has to do with intangibility, heterogeneity, and inseparability of production and consumption.